Wicked and Furious clips.
Other than being an amateur mycologist while I was living in Victoria, I mean, it's incredible living over there. It's very different here in Western Australia. You got bailing up. At my hospital, I would go for walks around the park at lunchtime and see people collecting mushrooms.
Over east?
Yeah, in Melbourne.
Wow.
So next to my hospital, there was a park and they like wood chip. And so there's wood chip gardens everywhere. You'd be crossing the road. There's mushrooms growing in the middle of the road.
Wow.
Once you know what you're looking for, you realise they're everywhere. And so I used to have a bit of fun with people over at the park because it'd be, at that point I was managing an alcohol and other drug service with 50 staff and a $3-4 million annual budget. And so I'd often be wearing a suit, tie, and I would see them with their little green Woolworths bag walking around the park.
Full of mushies.
I know what they're doing. And so I'd go and find one, I'd pick one, I'd grab it, and then I'd just V-line them really fast, with full eye contact the whole time. And when I got right up to their face, I'd say, "Are you looking for one of these?"
They looked a little bit shocked.
And they would be, they're sweating and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And then I'd have
think you're a cop. Yeah.
Then I'd explain what I do and do a bit of harm reduction with them, like explain to them that just because it turns blue doesn't mean it's a psilocybin mushroom. It can be sprayed with there's various pesticides that are being used around here.
Okay.
So and link them up with EGA and Prism and various other harm reduction resources.
Yeah, wow, okay. So, like, here in WA, like, I've been picking before down south, and there's, like, a lot of people say that mushrooms particularly psilocybin, like to grow on cow shit, right? Is that true? Because I've never seen it in WA. But
No.
you just see them, like, in fields and stuff, and there's just fucking thousands of them, but I've never seen any cow dung.
So that's a particular species, Psilocybin cubanus, which in the tropical parts of Australia does grow in cow dung, but the variety that we see in the colder parts of Australia, the wood lovers, Psilocybin, I can't say it, Subaringosia. Is the
weird
closest
science names.
or subs for short. The subs grow in wood as their substrate. So if you're in Queensland looking for mushrooms in summer, then they do. You will find them in cow dung, but not here in Perth and not in Melbourne either.
Yeah, wow, okay. Yeah, so have you done any looking into not psychoactive mushrooms, so the other ones like lion's mane, turkey tail, all those sort of things? Have you done much research into that?
Not really. I mean, I've heard anecdotal reports. One of the things I used to really enjoy, other than scaring people in Melbourne at the park, was going out into the forest myself with my partner and friends, and we'd go collect gourmet mushrooms. So there's various species of mushrooms growing in the wild that are edible. And honestly, growing up in Perth or in Western Australia at least, we're told about toadstools and to be scared of mushrooms. And so the ones that you actually eat that are gourmet mushrooms, if you saw them growing, you would think that's a toadstool. I wouldn't eat that.
Okay.
And so it was a good experience to be sort of shown how to pick different mushrooms, how to distinguish them, and develop a relationship with mushrooms in terms of not being afraid of them, being cautious, obviously. There's certainly, in fact, the things that, the mushrooms that look like the ones that you buy from the store, they're actually the most dangerous. They're the hardest to distinguish between.
Oh, so they all look very similar.
Yeah, they start looking very similar,
Wow.
and they're the ones I actually would need. I might do a spore print and see if they have the right colour. But even after then, I'd be like, I'm not sure if that's the right species.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take the risk.
So, what's like the number of deaths per year in Australia that people who pick mushrooms and stuff and accidentally pick up toxic ones? Is it quite a large number of people?
Yeah, I'd be guessing around somewhere between 5 to 10 every year.
Oh, 5 to 10, right? Okay.
5 to 10 people.
Yeah.
So it's. I mean, that's still dead people.
That's people.
And usually it's usually often the ACT, parts of New South Wales, people that have come from Asia and are used to picking mushrooms in Asia. And unfortunately, the death cap looks very much like a mushroom that grows in Asia. And so they accidentally pick the death cap, eat it, and die.
Wow, fuck. What are some of the symptoms if you eat a toxic mushroom?
It really depends on
Yeah.
the mushroom that you eat.
Okay.
So anything from just a bit of nausea through to, with that particular Amanita mushroom, which is called the death cap, the symptoms are basically liver failure.
Wow.
And
okay.
so it's really awful. It takes people about 3 days to die from it. So it's not a pleasant
long,
death.
sustained sort of death.
And,
Wow.
and unless you can get a liver transplant, there's really nothing that science and medicine can do for you.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, wow, that's shocking. So why is it that mushrooms, like even edible mushrooms and like mushroom extract, like lion's mane stuff, and psilocybin, why is it that they generally do upset the stomach when you eat them?
I don't know.
Well, that's just been my experience.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
because it's not my experience.
Yeah.
Certainly with, I'm not a huge mushroom fan. My partner is,
Yeah.
and you know, she could live off mushrooms without it upsetting her stomach, and yet other things will upset her stomach. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of individual variation, a lot of
right.
individual difference. And one key thing I think when it comes to magic mushrooms and body load is one is the species. So if they are picked locally, the subs, they can carry a bit of body load because of other chemicals that the mushroom produces.
Okay.
Or the substrate it's growing in. Mushrooms are literally sponges. They will just, if there are poisons in the ground, they will extract them. Whereas if you're buying or consuming something that's been sort of more commercially grown in someone's closet,
A lot more organic.
yeah, it'll be a cubenus, and you have to have sterile environment to be able to cultivate cubenus. So the cubenus tends to have less body load because it's not picking up those natural things that are in the ground. Some of which are probably good for us, some of them which are not so good for us.
Is it easy to grow mushrooms, whether or not they be psilocybin or edible mushrooms? Is it like an easy process?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Particularly edible mushrooms are very easy to grow. You can go to Bunnings and just buy a little box and they'll start growing.
Wow.
If you want to grow wood lovers, it's a little bit more complex because you have to play with the temperature and... if you're growing them outside of an area where they naturally grow, then you have to artificially change the temperature.
So like a hydroponic setup, but for mushrooms in a way.
Yeah, not even like a hydroponic setup. You could have a hessian bag with some wood chip in it, put some spores in there, just wet it. If you're living in Melbourne, 12 months later, all of a sudden there'll be subs growing out of it everywhere.
Wow.
The spores disperse. That's how the mushrooms get about. Is the spores disperse so widely, so much so that if you collect some mushrooms and say bring them home for analysis, the next year you'll have them growing in your backyard because the spores
they just spread absolutely everywhere. Wow.
And so some people say that might be one of the reasons why these mushrooms produce psilocybin is it's evolutionarily advantageous for the mushroom because we like to
You want to pick
them
Yeah.
and we then spread them.
It's interesting you bring up evolution. Obviously, being a psychedelics guy, you've probably heard of the stoned ape hypothesis.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's possible.
I would love it to be possible. That'd be so fucking cool.
Yeah, it's possible. I think there's so many theories out there though when it comes to psychedelics and their role in human evolutionary and society. There's the hypothesis that the spores may have even come from outer space.
I've heard of that.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
There's thoughts that psychedelics were used that basically formed a lot of what now we call religions.
Yeah.
They were formed through the use of psychedelics where people had the experience, they wrote about these experiences, and we moved away from a culture in which we had the experience into a culture where we read about other people's experiences. But there's a lot of data suggests that all of the religions really came from psychedelic use.
Wow, that's crazy.
And we've just sort of distanced ourselves from them. And the church actually, I think today doesn't like psychedelic drugs because in the Christian church, you go to the church to commune with God via a priest. Well, if you've got mushrooms and you can dial a direct line, why would you go to church?
Makes religion completely obsolete. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks for tuning in to another Naked and Furious clip. Please remember to subscribe to stay up to date on all of our new podcasts.